Welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward, the podcast that reveals how to plan, achieve, and enjoy the journey of creating epic results in your life, business, health, and relationships. Here's your host, best-selling author and motivational speaker, Xander Sprague.
Hello, Epic people, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I'm your host, Xander Sprague, and today I am honored to be joined by Quinn Magnuson. Quinn, tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, I do a lot of things, but I would suggest that born and raised in Canada, and what I am now and what I am bringing to the world is the message of effort over results through the philosophy of recognizing effort and celebrating those small wins and really growing people through a growth mindset and psychological safety, but recognizing the effort they put into things, not just focusing on wins and losses. Coming from, an athletic background, everything was about results. Everything was about wins and achievements and accolades. And what I recognized in being a parent, a coach, a teacher, and now a business coach and executive coach, that we need to focus more on the work we're putting into things as opposed to just the results that happen, because we can't control that. And so the effort over results movement is really what I'm bringing forth through the book that I'm writing, through the podcast that I have, as well as social media posts, and just working with the clients that I do around the world.
Absolutely. Well, welcome. I'm excited to have you here. I wanted to quickly touch on the fact that you were a professional athlete. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of Americans out there that don't consider the CFL professional football, but actually the league, it has been a professional league for 127 years, longer than the NFL has been around. And yes, we do not make the kind of money that NFL players do, but it is still a professional league filled with tons of American college players that you would know the names of. And so I played in the CFL for 5 years, as well as being a member of our national track team here in Canada, having gone to 2 World Under-20 championships back in the 1900s, because it was in 1980.
Last century. Yeah,
last century.
I feel you.
The 20th century, yes. So really strong athletic background, not just myself. My uncle played for the Chicago Blackhawks for 10 years. I had multiple cousins that were Division I athletes that went on to play in the MLB and NHL. Big, strong athletic background in the Magnuson family. But I think that's where our drive and work ethic comes from, obviously, and really what leads to success.
Absolutely. Now, you didn't mention this, but I got to ask, just because you got the last name of Magnuson. So, any relation to Magnus Magnuson, the power, world's strongest man?
I would love to take credit for him being a distant cousin. I don't see anything in the family tree on ancestry.com, but
okay, yeah,
but
I just thought I would ask. So.
Yeah, definitely size and strength do go in our family. I mean, I'm 6'5", 270. I played at 300 pounds. My son is the same height and weight. He plays college football. Our family is fairly tall and big, but I think that's just the Scandinavian background. My grandparents came from Norway and Sweden, and so there's most definitely a Viking heritage there. But I have not gotten any letters or postcards from Magnus yet.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Fair question, though.
Well, clearly, I know my obscure sports and stuff like that.
Yeah,
cool. So, what are things that you took from being a professional athlete that you now apply today? Because I obviously, when you play at a top level like you did, and look, I think the CFL is just as much a professional football league. Look, I don't think you tackled or got tackled any less hard than people in the the NFL.
I have 9 surgeries to prove it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But what are you taking from that, in that sort of, obviously, growing up as an athlete, as you said? It's all about the win, and there's a mind shift, and I love your mind shift. That's why I have you on, that, it is about the effort. It's about how you're doing the journey, not just your destination.
I've been on this self-reflection, very introspective journey, especially over the last 3 to 5 years since the pandemic. Not saying the pandemic caused it, but it really started to have me think about, the way my relationships were with others, first and foremost with my family, but then in the workplace and, when I was coaching sports. And I've had a few people over the years espouse the concept of, focus on whether the student you're coaching, or sorry, teaching, or the athlete you're coaching, or the employee that you're leading. Focus on the efforts that they're putting in and the work ethic they have, as opposed to just the result. And I took that to heart. And then with my own children, who are now 25 and 22, I was a bit of a typical Gen Z helicopter parent in the early 2000s. And, we get involved with all of our kids' sports. And I coached both my son and daughter in multiple sports, and I was heavily involved in that. And I started to realize that parents, teachers, employers that focus solely on the outcome of a game, the outcome of a test, the outcome of, a week at work, whether it be KPIs or metrics that you're measuring in the workplace, when they've heavily focused on that, it really burns the student, the athlete, the employee out. And so my athletic background, and I started playing sports at the age of 7, just like every Canadian kid. You got skates on your feet by the age of 4. Got into hockey, played baseball young, got into football because I got really big at the age of 12, 13. And what I learned from all of that, and the coaches that really meant a lot to me, was, yes, everybody wants to win. Absolutely. Yes, we want results. We want to get those gold medals, the accolades, the personal bests, and whatever. But you can't control that. You can't control the outcome. And the one thing I do love about individual sports, and I'll use track and field, for example, is that I can go out and I can have a personal record day. I was a shot putter, and I can throw 17 meters, which would be 56 feet for you Americans. And I might beat my own personal record by, half a foot and finish 7th.
Yep.
And that's the greatest example of focusing on what you achieve. Did you get better today? Is there progress in what you're doing day to day, even if it's just incremental, rather than did you hit the goal you wanted? And I remember seeing, I believe it was, I want to say it was Emmanuel Acho who did a TEDx talk on goal setting and how he doesn't like goal setting. And I listened to it and it made a lot of sense, because he said, when you get so micro-focused on just the goal itself and whether you achieved it or not, you lose sight of all the lessons you learned from the mistakes you made, from maybe there was failures along the way, but you still improved. You still had a process and a progress that made you as a human being better. And that's really what EOR stands for. It's the concept of celebrating small wins on a day-to-day basis. It's putting your gym bag by the door, even though you may not have gone to the gym yet. It's doing those little steps, those atomic habits, as James Clear would say, to get towards your goals. And so what I preach is be directionally correct, not absolutely correct. And what that means, and I'm sure it's pretty evident, but it's make the efforts and take the steps to go towards what you want, but don't be so obsessed with whether you got it or not. It's like people who get on a scale every 6 hours when they're doing weight loss, right? All you're doing is setting yourself up for misery and failure, because you're focusing too much on that.
Yeah.
Did you eat better today? Did you exercise today? That's a win. That's a huge win.
Yeah.
And so, so my athletic background, even though athletics is really all about the wins, did teach me to learn about the work ethic and effort that has to go into success, but not throwing it out the door just because you didn't succeed.
Absolutely. And there's so many things in my own life that I look at that I'm like, that's so true. I played athletics, through high school, and I, in my adult life, I've run marathons and ride a road bike. And
marathon would be a great example, Xander, right? It's like, did you finish?
Yeah, exactly. I'm still a marathon finisher. I was lucky enough to get to run the 2014 Boston Marathon. I want to be very clear. I did not time qualify. I got in on a corporate sponsor gave me a bib. I'm very grateful, but doesn't matter where I finished. I'm a Boston finisher, and that will never change. I finished the Boston Marathon.
Yep.
And for me, that was always the goal. Yes, I would like a PR. I would like to improve. However, because I'm not a gifted athlete, but I loved playing. I loved being able to participate. And yes, I like to win. When I played soccer and lacrosse and coming up through, junior high and high school and stuff, of course I like to win.
Yeah.
But I also knew there were people who were better than me.
Yeah.
And again, like as a runner, if you can run faster than me, you're going to beat me. But I'm still a finisher.
You might beat yourself though, and that's the thing. Comparison is the thief of joy, and I don't know who said it. It's a saying I saw last year, and I love that saying, because as soon as we start comparing ourselves to others, is where we lose the joy in our own life and where we become unhappy. And social media does that to us.
Absolutely.
When you start comparing your today to your yesterday, and you go, I'm a little bit better today because I put effort into anything, and it doesn't matter what it is. Big win right there. Take that from you, right? Build those layers.
Right. And one of the things that you said, and I talk about in my book, it's a big part of what I do is, for me, the concept of not yet. Not yet has so much optimism. You're writing a book. Congratulations on that. That's awesome. Oh, Quinn, has your book come out? Not yet. If you just say no, makes it sound, it's such a hard stop. It's never going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But I know, having put out 3 books, that it is not yet. There is, you say, oh, I'm going for this, but you get into the editing process. And all of a sudden you think that a month is enough time, but it turns out that the month comes, you're still reading proofs of it, and, having other people proofread it and finding commas, comma errors, and, oh, hey, I dropped this word, and whatever. It's coming out. It's a not yet. Talking about our kids, right? No one asks a freshman in college, oh, do you have your degree yet? Why? Because we already know that there's a path for them to go, and they're just beginning. Of course, you're not going to ask a freshman, well, why don't you have your degree yet? Because I got like 3.5 more years of studying to do to earn it.
Yeah.
And yet in our adult lives out in the world, oh, Quinn, why haven't you come out with your book yet? And so for me, I love to promote that concept of not yet. You put your gym bag by the door.
Yeah.
Have I gone?
Have you gone back to the gym yet? I asked my daughter that for 6 months.
Yeah.
And then finally she started going. It's okay. It's on your time.
Absolutely.
Your achievements and your growth and your progress is on your time and nobody else's. And like I said, when we start to compare ourselves to others, or when we are trying to achieve stuff for others to get others' approval, that's when we get burnt out. That's when we start to hate life. That's when we start to really be sad and anxious about things.
Right.
It's like, focus on you, focus on what you can control, which is your attitude and your effort, and you'll be much happier.
Absolutely. And your best effort is what it is. I remember when I was in high school, I was really struggling with geometry. And I was upset because my grades didn't, like, honestly, the grade did not reflect the enormous amount of effort I was putting in.
Yeah.
And I remember my dad said, look, are you trying your hardest? Are you doing your best? And I said, yeah, Dad, I'm going to extra tutoring. I'm so frustrated. And he's like, your mother and I don't care if you get a C+ in this, and that's your best effort. That's all we want for you. If you know that you are doing your best, and that was awesome advice. I honestly held on to that as a parent and said to my daughters, there are classes that you will take that will it's like it's written in another language. It just doesn't make sense to you.
That story is literally a mirror image of the second chapter in my book. Because
look at that.
I said the exact same thing to my son, because he was a terrible test taker. He was a smart kid, but hated tests.
Yeah.
And he would always do poorly on tests. And then he always would panic that we would get angry. He'd get a 50 or 60 on the test. And I finally, once I started implementing the EOR, the effort over results, philosophy, I said to him, I go, Leif, look, if I see you studying, and I'll study with you. I was a teacher. I said, I'll study with you. If I see you studying all week for an exam, and I know you've prepared, and I know you're ready for it, and you go in, and even if you fail that exam, I'm not going to be upset about it because you put your best effort in. You can't control the test that's put in front of you. You can't control the objective or subjective marks the teacher may give you. All you can control is the effort you put into it. So that story, Xander, and this is exactly what we're talking about in my book and everything that I do.
Absolutely. And
And how much pressure did that take off of you?
oh, so much, because
Yeah,
like all of a sudden and honestly, what it was is I didn't want them to be disappointed. Right. As a kid, the worst
absolutely.
thing that you could feel is that you've disappointed your parents. We've all
But
done it. We
they
all,
gave you something you could control.
right.
They
As
gave you the benefit of that. So
as boys, and I put you and I still in that. I told my
yeah.
daughters when they were young, I said, look, boys are dumb. We're all, I go, and I'm dumb. Teenage boys are especially dumb.
Especially when they get together.
And I said, yes. And I said, and to prove my point, and they're like, I don't really get it. I'm like, all right, let's go to YouTube. I said, put in people hurting themselves. We chose like a 5-minute video, and it was highlights of, and we got done. We watched all and I said, how many of those people were male and how many were female? I think there was like one, maybe two females out of what probably was, like 30 or 40 clips. Right.
Yeah.
And I said, understand that men in general, boys, do not think that we think, dude, let's ride our bike off the roof. Yeah, let's go. And they're
Yep.
like, I don't get it. What, don't you know you're going to get hurt? I said, it's only when someone's on the ground with their ankle pointing a direction it shouldn't go.
Yeah.
And someone goes, oh, wow, we could get hurt. And they're like, I don't get it. And I'm like, I understand. I just want you to understand.
Yeah.
Boys are dumb. I disappointed my parents because I made some dumb maneuvers, stupid maneuvers and stuff.
Mhm.
My two sisters made stupid maneuvers, but they weren't necessarily the same stupid maneuvers that I made. But I didn't want to disappoint my parents. And, I worked incredibly hard in school. I had a friend of mine in college who's like, I don't understand why you don't have A's.
Mhm.
He's like, I know you know this material better than me. Well, I really hate writing. Writing is really hard for me. It was back last century. We were talking about last century. Had to hand write everything. And my hand would cramp up and I just wanted to be done.
Yeah.
Best class I took in college, I had to give a 2-hour lecture. I rocked that thing. It was great. I look back and say, in high school and college, if I'd been able to take my exams as an oral exam, I think I'd have much higher grades because I knew the stuff.
Yeah. And that's what, you know what, Xander, and that's actually one of the reasons why I left teaching. I taught high school for 5 years and I realized that rote memorization tests and fill in the blanks and the type of ways that we're educating our kids, it's all just memorization. And the smart kids are just going to stay smart. They'll always get 90s. And the other kids are going to struggle because everyone learns differently.
Yeah.
And the mass congregation type education we still are putting out there, and largely, because there's really no other way to do it, is so antiquated and old because kids don't learn in that environment. You try to learn in an environment with 35 of your peers sitting right around you. Try to learn in an environment where you don't read very well, but you, like you said, if you had an oral test, you would do better because you could just verbalize what you wanted to say, but you don't write it down correctly. And that's, I mean, don't get me started on the education system because I think there's a lot of teachers out there that probably think the way I do, but that's why I left because I couldn't deal with these kids failing and struggling because of the system, not because of them.
No. And I actually just came from a meeting. I was meeting with someone from the college I went to and was talking about my college days and stuff like that. And I said, I got into college and I felt like I was sold a bad bill of goods. And I spent 12 plus years before I got to college memorizing and regurgitating.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to college, and unless you're doing math or science or something, I was doing social sciences.
Mm.
I got graded on how I could argue, how I could back up what I believe. Didn't have to be what the professor thought. If I could have another argument and back it up, I would get a good grade.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a completely different way of learning than I just spent my whole educational career doing. And when people in college struggle because all of a sudden they're like, well, there's not a right or wrong answer. There's a degree of correctness of I've backed up my argument with evidence, right? And I often I was disagreeing with my professors, but I made a good argument and got a decent grade because it wasn't whether they agreed with me. It was like, oh, you made this, or you said this, you backed it up with this research and these facts. Sure, absolutely, you get an A on that because you did, and that whole that, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of Canadian and or American education and stuff. It is challenging, but I think this whole idea of like all of a sudden you get to college and there's a completely new way to think and people struggle. Well, gee, I wonder why.
Yeah.
That would be like you played Canadian rules football. If you came down and played in the NFL, the field isn't as big. There's some different rules. You might struggle a little.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing really. And I want to go back to what we preach with effort over results is that one of the pillars of the three pillars of EOR is growth mindset. And growth mindset basically says with enough time and resources, anybody can really achieve anything. So the example I use when I do keynote speeches, one of the first things I do is with the audience, I basically say, I bring three people up on stage and I say, okay, I give them a list of questions and they can't use their phones. And I say, okay, answer these questions. And it's just like, who's the current United States president, simple stuff like that. And sure enough, there's always one person that finishes first. And there's always, the third person that finishes, maybe a minute or two after them. And then I say, okay, now I'm going to give you a new set of questions and you can use your phones. And the order reverses. And then I give a new set of questions and I said, listen, it's not about who's smarter. It's about, do you have enough time to do it? Are you given the resources, to be able to find the answers? It's no different than if I decided I wanted to, become an astrophysicist at the age of 54. I can do it, but do I have enough time and do I have enough resources, right?
Yeah.
Everybody on the planet and the growth mindset, this is the same thing with your employees, with your students, with your athletes. It's like you're going to have athletes of different levels. You're going to have students at different levels, employees with different levels and skills and abilities. It doesn't mean they're not capable. It just means, are you putting them in a position to succeed? And are you providing them with enough time and the right resources to succeed? But we fail students, we cut players from teams, and we fire employees because they didn't do it right away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we need to start moving away from. Now, there's going to be detractors out there. They're going to roll their eyes and go, I own a business. I don't have time to find out if my employees can do something. Either they do it right or they get moved on or they get fired. I understand that. I own my own business too. But I also will throw back at them. You hired them in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So it's your fault for hiring a person who was incapable, right?
Right.
But we need to just dial it back on the results obsession and just allow people to grow a little more. And that's really what leadership is today. So if you want to talk about leadership, I think that's where we start.
Absolutely. And the other thing, I do this in some of my workshops and stuff. I'm working with management teams and executives, and I have them go and do Gallup strength finders, and because I think that's such a great tool to say, here are the things that you are kind of your top three, and they give you a whole list of 32 things, but like, here are the things that your areas of strength. Well, funny thing happens. The days I get to work in my strength areas, work is decidedly easier. I'm a lot more successful. And as an employer, if I understand what strengths my team has, and let's say you have someone like me who's loves to present and is really good at it, right? Wouldn't you want to put me out to go talk to other companies and sell the company? Because that's my area of strength. I spent 17 years doing technical instruction. I taught people how to use software. And I swear to God, I spent half of my time in the office trying to educate the executives on the importance of having someone in training who knows how to be a trainer, who knows how to teach. And they're like, oh no, you can't do that. We're going to put this engineer in there. And I'm like, look, that guy's so much smarter than me, wrote the code, knows this better than I do.
Yeah.
But he or she is not a good teacher.
Yeah.
And I was horrified sometimes. You as a high school teacher, there are people who may be really, really smart, but they cannot teach. And then when a student asks a question, I'm like, what don't you get? I just explained it to you. Well,
Yeah. Well, that happens in sports too. You get, a guy like Wayne Gretzky, who is the greatest hockey player ever, and he becomes a coach and his team fails because he sees the game completely differently and maybe can't express. I see this in all walks of life, Xander. And I love it. And that's the one thing I do pride myself in, and you probably do too, is that I'm very good at coaching and teaching. I'm very good at it. It's not dumbing things down, but it's presenting things in a way that people can understand.
Absolutely. So I learned I taught sailing for 6 years. I taught kids and adults how to sail. Now, if you've never been sailing, the ability to teach such a highly technical skill and be able to find words to explain something that is a feel, right? Like, you ever been sailing?
You know what? No, but I have friends, and I just go, I have no clue how
Right.
y'all do
And
this.
so there's a
It's technical.
whole thing when you're sailing a boat. It is so hard to say it's a feel. You got to feel where the wind is, how it's shifting, what you need to do to adjust it, right? But I was given a really great piece of advice, which is, as a teacher, if I explain something to you and you don't get it, it's beholden upon me,
Yep.
the radio transmitter, to
Yes,
change
sir.
the message so that you could do it. And turns out I without sounding too braggy, I seem to have a skill for trying to explain stuff. Now I'd love to I love if you will indulge me with a super quick story. I was originally from Boston. I was living in Boston at the time, and my mom said to someone, they were having a problem with their computer, and they're like, "Oh, Xander's really good at understanding the computer."
Mhm.
So I went over and I helped her. She, of course, talked to someone else, and I was helping this woman, and I helped her get her computer set up to connect to the internet. So I do that, and then she's like, "Well, show me the internet." I'm like, "Well, what do you want to see?" "No, show me the internet." And I was like, "Huh." I can't tell her that the internet is actually not a place, but it's thousands of interconnected computers sharing information. Okay, that would have been lost on her. We could tell our kids that and they would get it.
Yeah.
But I was like, all right, now here's how I explain the internet to her in one sentence. Think of the internet as the world's largest library. You don't go in and say, what's a good book? Well, what are you interested in? But if you say, what is a good English murder mystery? Now I can answer that question. In that one sentence, this woman, who at the time I think was about 65, understood what the internet was.
Yeah.
Understood how she could access it to find the information.
Yeah.
That, I think, is an example of being a good teacher. Like, put it in terms that they can remember. Ultimately, I will come up with 1,000 different analogies. If you remember one of them 2 weeks from after I taught you, I've succeeded, because now you remember, oh, I remember that. Or I remember Xander's stupid story, but now I remember you remember what I want. As a high school teacher, you're like, I don't care how you remember it. I just want you to remember it.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you think back to your childhood, the people that were your favorite teachers, your favorite coaches, the favorite adults that you hung around, aunts, uncles, whatever, the reason why they were your favorite is because, number one, you felt safe around them.
Yeah.
And they made you feel okay to fail or make a mistake.
Yeah.
And they took their time with you to help you.
Yeah.
And they made you feel like you mattered. And that's so key in workplaces today. But you also need managers and supervisors that are and leaders that are willing to take that time with individual people to help them succeed. but we have people who are put in management positions and leadership positions who are not managers or leaders, but they've been there the longest, or they
Yeah, I
know
got
the
yeah.
most.
Yeah, I
And they're
worked
the
in those
worst people.
companies. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the worst people to lead because they're impatient. They see things differently, and they're super smart. And I'm not saying they're not valuable, but they just shouldn't be leaders.
Absolutely. And they're not really leaders because they're not doing look, I in my 22-year corporate career, I remember this one manager, and I always say, best manager I have. Why? Because he did a few key things. First thing he did was had enough strategic vision and sort of said, in 6 months, I need Xander to work on this. He doesn't have the skill set. So he tells me back here, hey, I need you to learn how to do this so that there's that intersection of when he needs me to do it. I now have the skills to do it versus just telling me, hey, go do this. I don't know how to do, I don't know this program. I don't know Java. Well, just figure it out, and then being upset that I'm not writing Java code, right? Like of course, I like that. He also did a great job. Big corporation, lots of memos of this change and that change, and he would literally send it out to the team, wind above your head, meaning read this, but don't worry, it doesn't affect your day to day life. That's a good manager who's
Yeah.
like, don't freak out about this. It's not changing it doesn't change us. We still keep doing what we're doing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's their job is to smooth out the bumps.
Yeah,
You know what? It's not to make things easier to allow slacking. It's to smooth out the bumps and to give you an environment where you feel like you can go at the speed you need to go. And some days it'll be faster and some days it might be slower, and that's fine, but they are the ones helping they're the guide on the side, right? And that's really what they should be.
absolutely. And if we go back to sports quickly, we look at some of the most successful coaches.
Mhm.
And there are obviously different kinds of coaches. You look at someone, and I think we could both agree, like Bill Belichick in his
Yeah.
NFL career, unbelievably successful, right?
Yeah.
There's all those things. Clearly, a good coach was able to get what he needed and, frankly, put teams together where people are like, why did you bring that person in? Or why did you decide to draft that person? He clearly saw something and figured out that by the time they come up to skill, this person, we can develop this skill. That's where I'm going to put them in. And then you go, oh my God, look at this breakout season. Well, Bill Belichick knew that 3 years ago when he drafted the guy.
Yeah. It
So,
was all about fit into his system.
yeah,
And workplaces don't need to hire the best people. They need to hire the people that are the hard workers and fit well into the culture and into what everybody's trying to achieve collectively, right? The best
absolutely.
championship teams aren't the ones with just covered in all-stars. They're the ones with your, like you mentioned Belichick, with the Wes Welkers of the world, the 5'7" receivers that nobody else wanted, right? It's a quarterback that they drafted in the 6th round that turns into an absolute GOAT, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, yeah.
Right? Michael Jordan and the Bulls. The rest of the Bulls without Jordan, when you take a look at a guy like Dennis Rodman, he was brought in specifically just to rebound.
Yeah,
And that's what companies are doing now. It's more about attitude and a little less about aptitude because they need it to fit the culture. Because culture these days, this isn't just a buzzword anymore. It is literally the success of the future of your company.
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know when I was interviewing, I'd be like, what is the culture? The one thing I never always made me nervous is when they say we work hard and play hard. I don't know about you, Quinn, but I'm a little nervous these days about play hard. I hear play hard and I just think, is this going to hurt?
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Golf's about as much as I want to go. It's physical activity and, with my body, but
Exactly.
yeah.
Well, Quinn, I want to thank you so much. What a fascinating conversation. I love what you're doing.
Cool. Thank you.
And
It's been a great journey for me too.
absolutely. If people want to learn more, contact you, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, I think we've put enough out there on the internets, the interwebs, as some people would say,
Exactly.
that you can find us by literally just Googling effort over results, and I would even just make it all one word. So our website is effortoverresults.com. You can actually go there and learn more about the philosophies and the 3 core pillars of what we do. And then our YouTube podcast channel, we just hit 1,000 subscribers. We're super pumped about that, and 40 episodes. So you go to youtube.com and once again, search for Effort Over Results. Instagram, same name, Effort Over Results. And then we actually have a TikTok page, which I'm not doing any dances yet, Xander, but a lot of the shorts from our YouTube episodes are on there, and a few fun things as well. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, literally just Google that, or you can email me at quinn@effortoverresults.com. And the book comes out in November.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on that. That's huge.
Thank you.
That's huge. Well, I want to thank you so much again, Quinn. I want to remind everyone that if you're ready to begin your epic journey, go to epicbegins.com. And as always, epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.
Get your gift copy of the award-winning book, Epic Begins with One Step Forward, at epicbegins.com. That's a wrap on this episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward with your host, Xander Sprague, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed public speaker, and licensed professional clinical counselor. To make your next conference or event epic, send an email to Xander at zander@epicbegins.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, epic choices, epic life.